What is non-outrage comics?
Thor, the Dark
Come
World.
on, man. Really wasn't that bad? The answer is no. I'm not saying it's the best movie. I'm just saying it ain't the worst. Welcome, everyone, to another Non-Outrage Comics. My name is John Garrett, also known as JG. And before we even get started, I just want to apologize for my voice. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm getting better. But let's do this anyway. So today, just to lay it out, I'm going to be talking about Thor, the Dark World, the second movie in the Thor franchise, and the one that is universally regarded as the worst Thor movie, and many times regarded as the worst Marvel movie. So I'm here to tell you guys today that's not true. That ain't it. There's way worse movies. And for some backstory here, we always see these articles. Every time you go surfing around, you'll see, the Marvel movies ranked from beginning to end. I think there's 32 now. And so I look at all these articles and man, I just don't agree with any of them. And so many of those articles, Thor, the Dark World, is at the very bottom. Come on, man. Really, was it that bad? And so the answer is no. There's worse Marvel movies. And as a matter of fact, I'm a part of another podcast that's called The Weekend No Show. That's what I do with two friends of mine. And we did actually go through and do my top 10 Marvel movies and my worst 10 Marvel movies. And so Thor, The Dark World appeared on none of those lists. So I'm not saying it's the best movie. I'm just saying it ain't the worst. And there's things to like about it. So I'm going to spoil this movie. If you haven't seen it yet, you should really dip out right now and then, check that movie out. Come back to this one after you've seen it because I will be spoiling it. Just letting you guys know. Okay, so to get started on this one, I think a lot of people say this movie is the worst because they hear it. Oh, Thor, the Dark World is the worst one. And then they parrot it back. And really, they don't have any real reason for saying that. So one of the things you hear is that, oh, it was dry. It was boring. The threat was convoluted. What I didn't understand it. Thor was stiff and Shakespearean and unlikable. And I reject all those characterizations. So, okay, to break down the movie, this movie takes place after Avengers. So we had to hit the heights of Avengers. Everybody was riding high on that one. And then Thor, The Dark World was the second movie to come out after Avengers. The first one being Iron Man 3, which is a movie that's way worse than Thor, The Dark World. But I won't get into that. Check out my worst Marvel movies on my other show, The Weekend No Show. I go through that whole one. But anyway, so I remember seeing Iron Man. I thought it was bad. And then Thor was the next one, and I went to see that. And no, I wasn't ecstatic about Thor, The Dark World. But part of it is that you came off that Avengers high. So anything was going to be disappointing. It really took until we got to Captain America, The Winter Soldier, until a truly great movie came out after Avengers. So the thing with Thor, The Dark World, what is happening here? What is this? So Thor is in Asgard. He's still dealing with the fallout of Loki's treachery from the first Thor movie and the Avengers. He's still fighting in all of the 9 realms between Asgard, Niflheim, Jotunheim, all these places that are connected. And Midgard is actually Earth, so we're one of the 9 realms. So he's fighting to contain the outbreaks of violence that have happened because Loki broke the Bifrost Bridge, which connected everything. So I guess people felt like they could act up, and the Asgardians had to put them back in their place. So then on Earth, Jane Foster, who was, of course, Thor's love interest, she is not dealing well with Thor being gone. She's starting to date again. We got that. But the main crux of this movie, the threat, is the Dark Elves. These Dark Elves have returned. They're trying to take advantage of what's called a convergence, where all of those 9 realms that I was just talking about line up. They line up, and at which point the dark elves will be able to plunge the universe into darkness, essentially just a state of entropy is what they want. They don't want any kind of brightness or lights or stars or heat or anything. So they want that all gone. So that's basically what we need to know. Thor has to stop this. Okay. And so I just want to break down some of the big things that I really liked. There's like really big things and some small things that I liked. So the first thing, when people say there was no humor, right away, I'm seeing Thor fighting alongside Sif. They are in Vanaheim, I believe, where Hogun of the Warriors 3, Hogun is from Vanaheim. So they're in Vanaheim. They're fighting these creatures who are trying to, I don't know, kill people or just take over. So they're putting down this descent. And, I like that Thor and Sif are really bantering back and forth. She's kind of his Asgardian love interest. Will they, won't they? Well, it never really seemed to happen. But so there comes a point when this gigantic rock creature comes out and it looks like, this is the big guy. He comes out to challenge Thor, and Thor kind of has this cocky smile. He's like, hey, I accept your surrender. And, nothing Shakespearean about it. Then the thing is, still doesn't go away. So he destroys it with his hammer fairly easily. And then he kind of looks around again, cocky smile, anyone else? And it's not stiff or Shakespearean. And so I was laughing, and everybody kind of backed up when this creature was reduced to a pile of rubble. So there was quite a lot of humor, much of which came from Thor in the movie. There was a lot from everyone else, a lot of Jane Foster and her assistant Darcy. They were kind of played for a lot of humor, but a lot of it came from Thor too. So I really don't see that it was that dry. Now, the second thing that I really liked were the dark elves themselves. Now, people kept saying that, the villains were lackluster. I think the main villain, Malekith, he himself was lackluster. But the dark elves, if we hear at the very beginning, we hear, I believe it's Odin saying this, long before there was light, there was darkness. And from that darkness came the dark elves. Now, I think what they're trying to say is these guys predated the universe. These creatures existed in darkness before the Big Bang. And when the Big Bang happened and there's this explosion of light, of heat, of motion, they don't like this. They are trying to contain the universe, put it back the way it was, where everything was dark and still and there was no energy in anything. And how are they going to do that? Well, the convergence that I mentioned earlier, they only have a specific window of time to make this happen. So they have the MacGuffin of the movie is the ether, which it's we know now it's an infinity stone. At the time, we didn't know it was an infinity stone, the reality stone. So it has a lot of power, but only during its convergence does it have enough power to completely plunge everything back into darkness. And so we see that earlier they tried to do this, millennia earlier, way back in the day, and it just it took the Asgardians to stop them. So another thing I liked about the Dark Elves was that we showed their ships, their technology. I really liked how Marvel wanted to show that the Asgardians and other races like them, it looked like magic, but it was really, there was advanced technology and energy manipulation and such. It looked like magic, but it also looked like sci-fi spaceships. They were traversing the void of space in these ships. And I thought the design of the ships was really cool. I just thought it was actually pretty awesome. So I really liked how I don't know who said that. Was it Isaac Asimov or was it Arthur C. Clarke, two giants of sci-fi, where they said any sufficiently advanced technology will appear to be magic, to those less versed in science. So I think it was probably Isaac Asimov. But that's what's going on here with these guys. And another thing that leads into the Asgardians themselves. Now think about this. I don't know how old these Asgardians are. I believe Loki and Odin kind of put out 5,000 years. Each Asgardian might live for 5,000 years. That's not that long to be fighting the Dark Elves shortly after the beginning of the universe. I'm not sure if maybe the Dark Elves existed before the universe and then the Big Bang happened. There would have been many millennia, eons even, before the first convergence, and maybe that's when the Dark Elves came back with this plan. But anyway, we see that it was Odin's father, Bor, who stepped up to stop these Dark Elves. They were going to essentially, wipe out the universe. And Bor says, no, the Asgardians have to stop this. So the Asgardians putting themselves out there to save everyone. And this isn't the only time. If we look at the beginning of the first Thor movie, once again, the Asgardians are stopping these frost giants from terrorizing mortals. They come down, and these guys are a force for good in the universe, the Asgardians, and they really put themselves out there, and it's like the rest of the universe probably couldn't have existed without the Asgardians doing the things that they did. So it really did strike me that I just don't know how old or how long the Asgardians themselves have been around. But it was interesting stuff. It really made me think. That's the kind of movie that I like. And so the convergence itself is another thing that I did like. You kind of see this trope in a lot of fantasy stories where it's like the stars must align in a certain way. But I like the convergence. I did like that all those 9 realms, now they're going to line up, and this is the time. And so the walls between those areas, between those realms, were breaking down, which we saw is what Jane Foster was detecting in trying to find Thor. She was seeing these readings of different realms bleeding through as the fabric of reality was really worn down. So, I mean, those were some of the big parts. Some of the little parts that I liked, there was a scene when Thor finally reunites with Jane and Darcy are arguing. Darcy, her assistant, who of course is mostly for comic relief, but her and Darcy are arguing, and it's raining, and Darcy finally notices that none of the rain is hitting them. And the camera pulls back, and we see that there is a dome around them where none of the rain is hitting them. And they look over, and there's Thor. He's finally come back, and he's keeping the rain off of this woman that he loves. So I was amused by that, and even more so when Jane runs over to Thor, and he keeps the dome following her, where Darcy stands still, so the rain starts falling on her again, and she's just like, oh, typical. So that was amusing, and there was also a great scene where Jane had been essentially infused with this ether, with the reality stone. People who attempted to detain or otherwise, assault her, they showed how it acted to defend itself. And so she blew all these cops away. I mean, not killed them, but just essentially blew them around. And so there was one of the cops who was like, hey, let me get that lady. She's under arrest or whatever. And Thor is like, hey, she needs help. And the cop says, she's dangerous. And then the camera kind of zooms in on Thor, and he's like, so am I. I was like, yeah, he saw what happened in New York. This is not a dude. That was funny because this British cop, you're going to run up on Thor? No, dude, I don't think I would do that. Another thing I liked, Heimdall, of course, played by Idris Elba. That dude is cool in no matter what he's in. Everything he's in, he's just cool as hell, man. Okay, not that. I didn't like that Fast and Furious spin-off movie he was in with The Rock and Jason Statham. That was not good. But everything else, that dude is cool, man. He just stands there, and he's got some cool reverb, auto-tune or something on his voice. I don't know what that is. Either way, I just liked Heimdall. Then where they get Jane Foster back to Asgard. And I kind of like how Odin is insulting her. He says, she does not belong here in Asgard any more than a goat belongs at a banquet table. And she tries to snap back on him, like, who do you think you are? He just replies, I am Odin, king of Asgard, protector of the 9 realms. So then she's like, oh, yeah, okay. And, take that, Jane. Don't mess around with Odin. Who do you think you are? So, and I will say, Darcy, played by Kat Dennings, Darcy, she's pretty funny. I did like her scenes. She's trying to find Jane. She's trying to reconnect with Eric Selvage, who we last saw in Avengers, who was taken over by Loki. He's not doing too well from his contact with Loki, which kind of surprised me in that the Avengers themselves, S.H.I.E.L.D. wouldn't keep more track of him. It seemed to me like S.H.I.E.L.D. would have locked him down for a while. He was kind of nutso, and I just don't know if S.H.I.E.L.D. would have let him run around like that. But either way, so Darcy, she has her own intern. She's an intern and she has an intern, so that was kind of funny. However, in hindsight, I will say this much. After having seen WandaVision and seeing her part in WandaVision, I don't really roll with Darcy anymore. In my opinion, I didn't like WandaVision. I didn't like the way it went down. And Darcy, if not in prison, she belongs in prison or at least up on charges for her part in letting Wanda get away. As we saw what happened in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the woman is a murderer on an epic scale. So anyway, Darcy's kind of a hit or miss, thing here. Also, another thing that I really liked, Frigga, who's Odin's wife, played by Renee Russo. She's not just Odin's wife because she's pretty or something. She's actually a warrior. She's a Asgardian warrior. When Malekith attacks, she beats Malekith. I like this. She actually beats him. It's only when the cursed warrior shows up, who's this big, awful creature that they made. He shows up, and only then does she get killed. But if it was only Malekith, she would have won. So it was just too bad that she had to go down. And another thing I thought, if you look at it, Frigga's she's not Thor or Loki's mother. Unfortunately, if I remember the mythology correctly, Thor's mother is a goddess from another pantheon even. She's not even Asgardian. She's like an elemental goddess of the earth or something. That's why Thor is not the same as the other Asgardians. Like if Thor can lift 100 tons, a regular Asgardian might be able to put up 30 tons. They're still strong, but they're not Thor strong. But anyway, so that's just neither here nor there. And when Frigga died, the Viking funeral was actually pretty awesome. So they put her, in the Viking boat and they send her off. She goes over this waterfall. And then her essence, Odin actually shoots an arrow to burn her boat up. And you can kind of see her essence is drifting away, going up, presumably to Valhalla. And that's where the gods go when they die in battle. That's where the Asgardian gods go anyway, when they die in battle. And there was a great scene after that where Heimdall, remember, he can see everything. And he turned to watch her ascend. And he was watching her essence, these glowy orbs or whatever. And then it disappeared. And there was a close-up on his face. And I really got the feeling that he just couldn't see her anymore. And it looked like it really affected him. They closed up on Idris Elba's face. A man, the great actor. And it was really moving that he tried to watch her until she was gone. And finally, last thing I really liked, or actually I'd say second last thing. I'm going to get into something else later. Second last thing I really liked, in the mid-credit scene, we saw the Collector debut. The Collector, one of the elders of the universe, if you're familiar with the Marvel Comics. And it's not how I would have played him, but I really did enjoy it. Just, see, oh God, it's the Collector. And I liked how this is just a commonplace for the Asgardians to show up here. They get around the universe, and he's like, oh God, Asgardians. He kind of gives them, a little bit of props. Oh, hey, Asgardians. After all they've done, I would think so. And when you think about it, as an elder of the universe, the Elders of the Universe were some of the very first races to become sentient after the Big Bang. And each one of them is from a different race, but they're the last of their original race. So he probably was right there when the Asgardians were going to war with the Dark Elves. He probably either saw or felt the repercussions of it. I'm sure he didn't take part because that's not what he does. And so the Elders, they have to focus on one thing. That's the thing that keeps them alive. He collects things. Another Elder of the Universe, the Grand Master, he wagers on things. That's how he stays alive. They have the gardener who, obviously he gardens. They have the runner who runs, the champion who fights. There's other ones, but I like seeing the collector and some of the cool stuff that was in his collection. And that moment was actually at the very end when they tell us that thing was an Infinity Stone. Okay, I thought that was pretty great. So some things that went wrong in this movie. So, because again, I'm not saying this was the best movie ever. I'm just saying it ain't the worst, man. It ain't the worst. I'll tell you what the worst one is later. But so now, some things that did go wrong with this movie. Malekith was just not given enough of a personality. He was dry. He was kind of dry and dull and just like, hey, I'm a bad guy. And it was kind of a cookie cutter bad guy personality. In the comics, Malekith, he was a real loudmouth and he was always shouting out stuff and talking crap all the time. And I just couldn't wait until he got his face punched in. But here, it was really kind of bland. So, secondly, the Cursed Warriors. There's a point in the movie where he shows, he takes his second in command. You're going to become one of these Cursed Warriors. They're big, they're powerful, they're tough. So Curse in the comics, Curse was just one guy who came after Thor, and he just kept getting stronger and stronger. And he was really hunting down Thor, and it became a really awesome storyline. Like, when is this thing going to get to Thor? We didn't even know why it hated Thor so much. It was just coming after him. It was beating the crap out of people, until it finally got to Thor. I mean, we found out what it was, but in the movie, it really wasn't played that well. It could have been something that maybe was stalking Thor the entire movie. I think that would have been better, but they kind of just threw it in there, and it really didn't pay off. And another thing that didn't work out for me much is I didn't really care too much about the Loki stuff in this movie, which I didn't expect after Avengers. I was really looking forward to some more Loki, mayhem. We didn't really get that. And the stuff that did happen with him, I didn't care that much. Really only at the end when we saw how he had usurped Odin. I mean, I was like, oh shoot, Loki did something here that finally is living up to his nature, and then it was over. So, I mean, I did like that. I remember being in the theater like, oh crap, that ain't good. So, another thing that's just weird to me is this is one of those times when the stakes are like really, really, really high. I mean, this is a convergence of all of reality, and everyone everywhere can be destroyed. If this isn't an Avengers level threat, I don't know what is, man. I don't know what is. I mean, Thanos was Avengers level. This is another Avengers level because everyone is going to die. Thanos just wanted to kill half the people. I mean, I really wish they could have thrown something in like Thor desperately trying to get in contact with Iron Man, with Captain America, with anybody. Can I please get in contact with anyone? But I can't. But he doesn't do that at all. Instead, he relies on Jane and Darcy. And to me, I don't see you doing that when the stakes are that high. So it's something that kind of takes me out of the story when I see that. Now, I want to get to what I thought was the best part. And this is just me being not only a comics geek, but kind of a science geek too. Toward the end, when Thor engages Malekith, they're fighting in London, but the convergence is happening. The walls between reality are breaking down. There's portals everywhere that you can't even really see. So there comes a point where Thor's hammer gets separated from him, and him and Malekith, they fall through a portal, and then that portal closes. And as we know, due to Odin's enchantment, Thor's hammer must always return to his hand. Well, I loved how the hammer, it decides itself. Once Thor falls through the portal, and that portal closed, it has no choice but to go through space and cross the entire universe to get back to him. You see the hammer turn, and it immediately launches itself into orbit. It goes out into space, and it's going to fly across space for who knows how long until it gets back to him. And then when Thor would reappear on Earth, the hammer turned right back around, and it's coming back to him. It just shoots down through the atmosphere, and that kept happening many times where he would go through these portals, and then the hammer would turn around again. So I became really interested in the hammer's GPS system. I mean, it knows where Vanaheim and Muspelheim and Niflheim and Jotunheim or Jotunheim were, and it knows where they're located in space in relation to Midgard, which is Earth. So that's very cool. Anyway, I mean, that's kind of where I leave things here. I mean, the movie was underrated and straight up unfairly maligned, in my opinion. Yes, after Avengers, it was a downer. Both Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 were a bit of a letdown after the Avengers. And as I said, Iron Man 3 is way worse than Thor 2. I was really bored during Iron Man 3. And a couple times I really just wanted to walk out of the theater. I never had that during Thor: The Dark World. So, I mean, there you have it, guys. I think that if you give it another watch, if you've seen it already, give it another watch. I think that you will see it differently. And again, no, not the top movie. I think it's squarely in the middle. There's many that are worse. I already mentioned Iron Man 3, but I'm going to tell you the crappiest Marvel movie that has ever come out is Eternals. There. I let you have that one for free, guys. I let you have that one for free. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. This has been another Non-Outrage Comics. If you guys like this, please give me a like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Share it if you like this, or leave me a comment if you agree or disagree. I mean, those of you who liked Thor: The Dark World, I'd like to hear from you too. And the ones who didn't like it, I already know what everybody thought. But if you liked it, let me know what you thought. But for now, I'm going to break out, and I'll catch you guys next time.